Welcome to Creatively Optimized, the podcast for service businesses ready to shine online. I'm Jenny Belanger, the founder of Jenny B Designs, a web design studio that builds strategic and beautiful websites that are designed to book you ideal clients and make you money. With over 10 years of growing my own design business, I'm here to share tips to creatively optimize your business. Get ready to learn web design strategies for high converting websites, digital marketing tactics to reach ideal customers, and systems to simplify operations. If you're ready to blend creativity and strategy, you're in the right place. Join me on this journey to creatively optimize your unique business. Let's do this. Have you ever struggled to get your vision across to your web designer? Or perhaps you found yourself in the middle of a project realizing that you and your designer are simply not on the same page. Or maybe it's not even a web design project. You're just in the middle of a project with a contractor or with someone that you are collaborating with, and you find yourself in this situation. I want you to know you are not alone. And sometimes poor communication is one of the most common pitfalls in both web design projects and otherwise. And I think that when you do have poor communication, it can lead to countless hours of wasted effort, frustration, and even sometimes projects that just simply fail. Today, I want to talk about things that you can do to help make it not this way. By mastering that art of effective client communication, you can ensure that your web design projects or even any other projects that you're working on run smoothly and that they stay on track and they result in a product that meets or even hopefully exceeds your expectation. This episode was inspired by a recent client project that I had, and honestly, I thought I had several stopgaps in place to prevent what happened with this client. But it was clear that either those stopgaps weren't working or that they weren't being understood, but I think it came down to there wasn't enough communication. So let's dive in and talk about client communications for a good, smooth, successful web design or design project or anything else you've got coming up. Let's get into it. Before I talk about the specifics of effective communication, I want to take a second to kind of understand why communication is so important in web design projects in particular. At its core, a web design project is a really collaborative process. It involves taking your visions, your goals, those ideas, and translating them into a functional, beautiful, visually appealing website. And in order to do this, you and your designer need to really be in sync throughout the entire project. You need to have that shared understanding of your project's objectives, that target audience, the desired look and feel. This is a really important one. And the key functionalities and integrations that you want your website to have. And this is really where communication comes into the picture. That clear, consistent communication helps establish that strong foundation for your project, and it helps ensure that everyone is working towards the same goal and there are no misunderstandings or incorrect assumptions. When you communicate with your designer, you can provide them with the information, the context, and the feedback. This one is so critical that they need to create a website that truly represents your brand and it meets your needs. And even more so, that good communication, it builds trust and it helps foster that positive working relationship between yourself and your designer. When you are open and responsive and clear, you demonstrate that you value your designer's expertise and are really committed to the project and being a collaborative partner working towards success. But on the opposite side, bad communication, it can lead to a bunch of different problems. When you fail to communicate your needs clearly, this is a really important one, or provide timely feedback, which is also important because I have really strict timelines, your designer may make decisions based on incomplete, inaccurate, or wrong information. And then, in turn, this can result in your designer kind of missing the mark and then leading to time-consuming and even costly revisions that cause frustration on both sides. And I will say, it's on both sides because as you as a client, if you're getting something that you didn't want, there's frustration to you. But as me as the designer, if I think that I'm designing something that you wanted and then learn that it isn't what you wanted after it's already been designed, then there's frustration there as well. So that communication is kind of that glue that holds that project together. And it needs to be prioritized from the beginning. And that way you will have a smooth, successful project. So understanding how important communication is, let's talk about some of the common communication mistakes that I sometimes see that can derail projects. One of the biggest pitfalls is lack of clarity in the feedback. Now, when I share with my clients, let's use a homepage. So let me just give you a brief overview of what I do. Typically for a web design project, if there isn't branding, then we're just doing the website design with their current branding. We have an intake call and I do a strategy, I do research, and then we map out your site, talk about your inspirations, and from there I put everything together and come up with your homepage mockup. And this is the space where you say, yes, Jenny, like you got it, you're on the right track, or no, this isn't the right track, and let's go back and revise it so that we can get that homepage in alignment before I begin building out the rest of the site. So let's use that homepage mockup. This is the first thing that you're seeing from me. And when you're reviewing that design, you need to make sure that you're providing feedback that is specific and descriptive. So things like vague feedback, like, I don't like it, or, it needs to pop more. This should be a big one back in the day. It needs to pop more. It doesn't give me that oomph. That doesn't really help me as the designer understand a clear direction. Like, you need to articulate exactly what isn't working for you and maybe even provide examples or references for me to really understand your point. I'm going to chat a little bit more about this when I share with you what I share with my clients about feedback, but we'll come back to this. Another common mistake is being sporadic with your communication. Sometimes you may have projects, and this doesn't happen with me. Thankfully, my clients are really, really great. But if you tend to go radio silent for weeks or only provide feedback at the last minute, it really can throw off that project timeline and leave your designer kind of guessing until they hear from you. And then sometimes it's kind of like too late, and now they've got to go back, like I said, and it causes frustration. So making sure that you are in constant communication and that it is frequent. Another one is kind of failing to address your concerns or your issues promptly as soon as you see them. This is another thing to avoid. If you notice something and it isn't quite right, or you have a question about a design choice, bring it up. The sooner the better, because that way it's easier to resolve. If you notice that there's something wrong, or something is a little bit off, and you don't say anything, you say, no, it'll be fine. And the designer keeps going along those lines for a while, and then you finally decide, you know what, there is something wrong. There's so much design work that's already been done. And if you had used your communication skills and communicated that earlier, then it could have been addressed earlier and resolved the problem. So don't wait. If you have any issues or concerns, say it earlier rather than later. And this applies to everything, not just design projects. To recap, these 3 pitfalls: lack of clarity in feedback, infrequent or sporadic communication, and failing to address concerns promptly, are things that I see all the time that you should be keeping in mind that will help you have clear communication with your web designer or with any other collaborator in any other type of project. Now, I mentioned earlier about how I share my homepage with my clients, and this is really our first check-in to make sure that we are in alignment with our design and the look and feel and the goals of the website. And when I give them this homepage mock-up, I also share with them a guide with 6 ways that they can provide effective feedback to me. These feedback guidelines all feed back to the 3 communication pillars that I mentioned before. I'm going to share these with you to see if they would help you, and they probably pertain to any other project that you might have going on as well. And you'll probably hear me say that so many times throughout the episode, but I just think that communication is key. It is just so powerful, and it just makes the world go round, truly. So, my first tip is that I want them to focus on goals, not tiny details. When giving feedback on my homepage mockup, my proposed design, I want my clients to work hard to communicate what's not delivering on the needs of the project rather than suggesting specific alternative design solutions. I always remind my clients that they hired me to come up with a web design solution to help meet your goals, not to work Photoshop on your behalf and to design the prettiest thing, but to come up with solutions to meet your goals. I encourage my clients to think back to the target audience that we have, who is often not you, and what will resonate with them. And then share with me feedback that is, number one, specific. So I mentioned this earlier, ambiguous phrases like make it pop or it's too bland are really hard to interpret. I really can't. I have a hard time with that. And design is really subjective. What pops to you and what pops to me might be two completely different things. You might mean pop to be bright colors, and I might think pop to mean bigger, bolder, stronger fonts, and it can get really confusing. I encourage my clients to be specific so I don't have to guess. Tell me exactly what you like and don't like about the website. Is it the font? Is it the colors? Do you not like the imagery? And you want to use specific language, as specific as possible. The second thing is try not to micromanage the project. And this is hard. It's one thing to share your opinions, but it's another thing to tell me exactly what to do. And there's a fine line because you are hiring me to do a job for you, but I am the expert. And at the end of the day, I want you to be successful. And what I'm working to do is based on my vast knowledge of what works best for web design and to meet your goals. You hired me for my expertise. And so if there is something that you aren't sure why I'm doing it, ask me. And I would gladly share with you why and my reasoning behind what I'm doing. And a lot of times I find that when I do that with clients, to say, oh, I didn't think about that. That makes sense. I totally get it now. But, upon first glance, they didn't understand my reasoning behind it. This actually goes back to how I do my presentations. When I do share my homepage presentations, I share a lot of reasoning behind why I am doing certain things, because that way myself and the client are on the same page. Back to that micromanaging, if you are presenting me with the solution, then I don't really understand the problem. And what do I mean by that? If you see, let's use a title for an example, and you see, I think this title, this headline should be bigger. That doesn't give me any context to why you want that to be bigger. I don't understand the problem. I know you want that header to be bigger, but why? If you can tell me what the problem is, I can understand the why. And then maybe I might have a solution that is better than actually just making the header bigger. If you want the header to be bigger because it's just too small to read, then yes, I think your solution to make it bigger is probably the best. But if you want it to be bigger because it doesn't stand out from the rest of the text on the page, then maybe making it bigger isn't the best option. Maybe it's that we use a different font. Maybe we change the color. Maybe we create more white space. Maybe we do an underline. There are different ways to solve a problem. And so try sharing the problem with me, and then we can work on a solution together. The next one is give examples. I get it, you're not a designer, so I know it can be hard to verbalize your opinions about design or put it into words. I totally get it. And you don't need to know design lingo to be able to talk about design. If you are having a hard time finding the right words, then try using visual examples to illustrate your point. And my clients are so good at this. I love it when they send me links to other websites or a screenshot because it gives me that visual reference instead of like a vague description that I really can't understand. So if you're having a hard time verbalizing what is going on, then share with me some screenshots and say, this is kind of what I'm loving, and I was hoping that my website could be more like this. And that gets the conversation going. And then maybe I'm able to understand visually what you're referring to. And if I'm not, then I can ask more detailed questions and pull out what you're trying to get. So definitely use examples. I love it. And that helps your designer get what they're looking for. The next one is ask questions. I want my clients to not be afraid to ask questions. Feedback should be open, it's a discussion, and it's not just a list of changes that you send off to me. I want to ask those thoughtful questions. It creates that dialogue. I've heard sometimes clients say that they don't ask questions because they don't want to annoy their designer. But actually, it's kind of the exact opposite. When it comes to feedback in design, there really are no silly questions. Asking questions shows me that you value my opinion and you're really invested in the project. And it helps us really get to what you're aiming for and shooting for, and it makes a better project. So don't be afraid to ask questions. And finally, the last thing that I share as a designer to my clients is be kind with your feedback. It would rock my world if you loved the design, that homepage mockup so much that you didn't want to change a single thing. And this does happen to a small percentage of my clients. But truthfully, realistically, it doesn't happen every time. And I get that. And I'm used to receiving feedback and criticism, and it won't hurt my feelings as long as it's direct and honest. I want you to be thoughtful about the way you frame your design feedback and make sure that your feedback is about the design. I really have worked so hard to take out any personal feelings when it comes to my designs, because at the end of the day, I want my clients to get the best result possible. But at the same time, I want clients who will speak kindly and understand that we are all trying to do our best. And I will say that all of my clients are so wonderful. And I think that what you put out there, you really attract. And it's just an important thing to remember when you're giving feedback to anyone is be kind and just share honest feedback, and maybe even try to avoid using the word you. For example, I put in about section on the third section of the homepage, and they wanted it in the fourth. Using the word you when you write, why did you put the about section in the fourth spot? It doesn't make any sense. Versus writing something like, the placement of the above section was confusing to me. I'm used to seeing it higher up on the page. Is this the best place for it? That's the better way, the kinder way to use feedback. Keep that in mind too. When you're giving feedback, be direct and honest, but be kind. Those are the 6 things that I share with my clients when I encourage them to be giving me feedback. But again, it goes back to the 3 points that I made earlier. You need to have clarity in that feedback. You need to be in constant communication. And if you don't address something right away, it causes a problem. And finally, I just wanted to end with the 4 benefits of prioritizing those clear communications in your web design projects. The first benefit is that clear communication can lead to a faster project completion and fewer revisions. When you and your designer really are on the same page from the start and can maintain that open communication throughout the project, there are fewer misunderstandings and we can catch on to potential issues earlier on. This definitely means less wasted time on back and forth revisions and just a smoother path to the final project. The second benefit is better alignment with your goals and visions. By really vocalizing your objectives, your preferences, and your target audience clearly, you can give your designer the information that they need to create a website that truly reflects your unique brand and meets your needs. And it leads to that final product not only looking great, but also effectively serving its purpose. And another key benefit of clear communication is that stronger client-designer relationship, that strong relationship with your contractor built on trust and on understanding. And when you communicate openly and consistently, you really foster a sense of collaboration and partnership with your designer. And this leads to a more positive and productive working relationship that really extends beyond just the current project. Because most likely you are going to have an ongoing relationship with this web designer, such as I do with my clients as I do care plans for them, as well as helping them with content updates and smaller projects that come up with their website. And finally, those clear communications often benefit in a higher quality end product that really exceeds your expectations. Again, by providing that detailed feedback, addressing those concerns promptly, keeping those lines of dialogue open, you can help your designer really refine and improve your design at every single stage of the process. And this ends with a website that looks polished, it functions seamlessly, and it really effectively represents your unique brand. So, to wrap it up, throughout this whole episode, you probably heard me say it, but communication really is the foundation to any successful web design project. You need to have that clear goals and expectations, provide specific and actionable feedback, and when you do this, it brings your vision to life on screen. I hope you've learned a few things that you can implement in your communications with your contractors, your web designer, anyone that you are collaborating with. And if you have any other ideas that I haven't thought of, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me a message on Instagram at the Jenny B Designs or send me an email, jenny@jennybdesigns.com. I'd love to hear from you and maybe what you got out of this episode and anything else that I could have included, because communication is such an important thing, and I really do believe it is the key to success. And I want us all to have success every day out there. So thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you next time. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast all the way to the end. I really appreciate you being here. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, rate, review, and share it with someone else you know it can help. If you like this episode, then I want to invite you to visit jennybdesigns.com, where you'll find videos and resources to help make your current website work even harder for you. And if you're feeling like your current website doesn't truly reflect you or your brand today, it's not attracting your ideal clients or making sales, or maybe you just feel embarrassed by it and it's holding your business back, then reach out. I'd love to help you design a website that truly reflects you, works for you 24/7, bringing in those ideal clients and making you money. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time for another new episode.